Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Wednesday, October 5th, 2022. And our top story today, thinking of retiring as a federal employee? What you need to know. Well, Jeff, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Jeff, thanks for having me. Please, appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think there's so much that we need to unpack here. And you and your team are incredible when it comes to guiding federal employees up towards retirement. So let me start with just asking a basic question. If I'm a federal employee, I work for the federal government, the Postal Service. What are the steps I need to take to contemplate retirement? If I just want to hang it up, put my boots under the bed, and I want to hang it up, what are some of the things that I need to be thinking about as I contemplate that retirement?
Well, a lot of that's going to depend on how close you are in terms of retirement. So if it's tomorrow, the thinking's been done. If it's a year or 5 years down the road, there's some strategy you can apply. And so let's presume that we are, 1 or 2 years down the road, and we have some opportunity to really impact what that retirement's going to look like. Obviously the current environment, inflation, a lot of volatility in the markets, interest rates rising, which has, of course, a negative impact on bond prices. Those are the types of things that an individual working for the federal government, just like anybody else who's approaching retirement, what they need to be considering. The platform or the retirement system for the federal government, for the federal employees, is incredibly rich and robust, especially if they approach it correctly. I'll talk about some of the you have to's, then we talk about some of the you want to's. You have to, going into retirement, at least in our opinion, approach your health benefits, which in my opinion is maybe one of the richest benefits federal employees have, their FEHB, the Federal Employee Health Benefits. You have to have ongoing and active participation in that platform for at least 5 years prior to entering retirement. So you've got to make sure that that's in place. If you've had, for whatever reason, a lapse, you really need to consider how that impacts your future. Health benefits, health insurance, health care, obviously, of course, very, very expensive. And the FEHB platform that the federal employees are eligible for, again, presuming that they've had that those minimum thresholds, one of the best, in my opinion, one of the best benefits a federal employee has. So the FEHB is one of those you have to's. Most federal employees today, roughly 90-95%, have participation in the thrift savings plan. There are some individuals that are still governed or underneath the umbrella of the civil service retirement system. And so those individuals may or may not be contributing to their TSP. You hope that they are. So let's say 95% of individuals have the thrift savings plan. As individuals engage in serious retirement discussion, or as they approach that retirement, that time frame, they've got to be looking at how they're going to access the principal in their TSP. Now, some may not need it. Some may have built up a liquid net worth or a cash flow that they don't need it. Some, specifically CSRS employees, might have a pension that's large enough where they don't have to impede upon that principal. Most FERS, Federal Employee Retirement System, that represents today the vast majority of federal employees. Most FERS employees are going to have, all FERS employees do have the thrift savings plan. The TSP, when you want to retire, could be just like any other 401k or IRA. You can leave the money invested, take out portions, as you deem fit. The TSP also has, it's referred to as the TSP Annuity. This is a MetLife product. It is there's various ways they can use this, but it is a private market product offered through the federal government. And you have to look at the benefits and detractions of that. You're going to guarantee lifetime income, but oftentimes the principal is sacrificed in the process. We said, again, you can guarantee lifetime income through that solution, but oftentimes you're giving away your money to MetLife, all of it, day one. So
Right.
it's not, maybe not necessarily something that when people truly understand the impacts there, that that it becomes all that favorable. So people have to start looking at how individuals or how they want to impede principal in their thrift savings plan. Again, distributions, periodic withdrawals, whether they choose to roll it over to an IRA, they really need to be looking at their individual retirement circumstance, their cash flow needs, what have you, and how safe they want their investments to be in retirement, what suits them.
Yeah, Jeff, I mean, there's a lot of, obviously, we're all individuals, and so there's a lot to unpack for every individual. Let's start with the healthcare. If I could just back up for a second. You mentioned it's one of the richest benefits. And we recently had someone on from the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, part of the HHS system. Let me ask you, for those folks who may or may not know, and I have to claim ignorance here, are federal employees eligible for Medicare services, or do they have to rely solely on the healthcare benefit, the federal healthcare benefit?
No, very much. Most federal employees will use both.
Okay, so that is, it's important to make sure that you are doing the enrollment for healthcare for your Medicare at or near retirement. Make sure that you're enrolling, but also making sure that you had the 5-year service in order to qualify for the health benefit.
Correct. Upon being eligible for Medicare, age or retirement or what have you, you're going to want, or most individuals do choose to look at advantage or alternatives, additional services within the Medicare system. And so the way an individual's health impacts their decision making, and it really is, there might not be any more personal decision than what we're talking about here. Your health, your geographic location, the zip code that you live in, as odd as that sounds, quite literally is going to help determine certain Medicare eligibility or which specific plans might be available to you. And so basic Medicare, yes. FEHB, again, in my opinion, is one of those have-tos. And so the simple answer, because of the very custom or very personalized solution that exists here, is an individual is wise to explore, one, eligibility for both, two, any type of additional service they want to get through Medicare Advantage or additional plans of that nature, and then making sure that those two plans marry up very closely, and that they have they've fully analyzed that. The simple answer there is people should be identifying a professional, someone that's knowledgeable in both Medicare, knowledgeable also, of course, in all of the nuances related to federal employee benefits. An individual has both knowledge to bring that together, because there are a lot of overlap, or maybe overlap's the wrong word. There's an awful lot of connection between the two, and you really got to approach it with eyes wide open and a lot of knowledge.
Jeff, a question, and then I'm going to take a commercial break. We'll pick up the retirement discussion after the break. But I should have asked you this question first. How far in advance should I be educating? Look, we might be experts in our job, whether you're a financial advisor, whether you are working for the federal government, but you have to do a lot of prep work. How far in advance, if I'm contemplating retirement, I get the feeling I should, and I work for the federal government, I shouldn't just contemplate this the day before and then submit my paperwork, right? There should be a lengthy process that someone follows, whether it's 60, 90, 120 days, maybe even 12 months before the retirement date. But in terms of educating yourselves, when should I start if I'm contemplating that retirement?
As early as possible. The day you begin employment officially. I mean, it really is the earliest you can possibly begin, the better off you are. And so now, for most of us, the concept of retirement planning the day we started, well, that's in the rearview mirror. That's a long time ago. For the vast majority of individuals, especially for the federal government, given the average age of employee, most of these individuals are advanced in their career. What we see, I think, is maybe the best way to answer that question. What we see as the most successful route under most practical instances is an individual should be looking at their retirement 2 or 3 years prior to. And so by the time you get within 3 months, as I mentioned, I think very early on, the decisions are pretty much made for you. If you're 3 months out, chances are you're processing paperwork and you're accepting whatever solutions exist on that day and available to you right now. There's really not a whole lot of strategy that you can employ. Obviously, of course, go back to the TSP, how you impede that principle, whether you impede the principle, what solutions you make from a rollover standpoint or your life insurance or your FEHB, but preferably years. We like to see people really start to educate themselves as many as, let's say, 3 or 5 years in advance. We see a lot of people attend our classes 5 years prior to retirement, 3 years prior to retirement. Those really are, in our opinion at least, those individuals that are going to be most successful. Because if you're 5 years prior and you attend a pre-retirement training course provided by PSRE, what you're going to get is all the education you need, all the knowledge you need, and then you have 5 years to implement if you have to make changes. And it is seldom massive ad hoc 90-degree alternate course, but just fine tuning. And the individuals that approach it in that manner ultimately do a lot better. Of course, the further away from retirement you get, those small alterations in trajectory really do make a huge difference. But again, if you're really up close and a year, 6 months, 3 months to retirement, the solution is pretty much baked in. And so at that point, you really just got to make sure that everything you can possibly do is implemented. I guess, Jeff, maybe the best way to put it is earlier the better. And the closer you are to retirement, if you've not done absolute deep dive on the solution yet, if you really are, up against the gun, you don't have a whole lot of variability in terms of how you approach it. There's going to be the need to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jeff, as I said, I need to take a very quick break. When we come back, we'll talk more about planning that federal retirement. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms, especially for the smaller businesses? I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you over 50? Would you like to get up to 33% more income in retirement? Then call now for this free book, Annuity Do's and Don'ts for Baby Boomers. This free book reveals little-known secrets about annuity strategies that will help you make the right choices before buying an annuity. Call right now for your free book, and as a bonus, we'll also throw in a free annuity rate report, both absolutely free for calling Annuity General today.
Call 800-504-8194.
Well, Jeff, thanks so much for staying with us. Really appreciate you hanging around for segment 2.
Happy to be here, obviously.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. And Jeff, you talked about the more time to plan. I think everyone would agree with you. Let me just ask you how you take into account what's going on with the unpredictability of markets. And there may be a lot of people out there, I know I'm one of them, there's a lot of inflation, the cost of gas, the cost of food, very expensive. Can you time how should you factor in inflation and the unpredictability of markets into this retirement discussion?
That's a very good question, and I mean it's the $1 million question, really.
It is. It is.
So yeah, inflation is always going to occur, and we've had this anomaly for the last 12 years, where we had this phenomenally low interest rate market, very accommodative Fed. It's catching up with us, and so we see the 10-year at 0.4% or whatever it was, roughly 2 years ago, now in excess of 4%. That's a massive swing. I mean, a historic swing. And so, Jeff, I'd like to say that it's probably less about timing, because people that try to time the markets, time interest rate cycles, things of that nature, it's a fool's errand. You really can't do it successfully. No one's proven they can. It really, really, really is probably the wrong way to do it. What's much more realistic, what is much more consistent, what is much more achievable, is for an individual to have different access points to their money, different solutions working for them at different times, a successful financial plan, and we'll stay specifically with federal employees, a successful financial plan, and let's imagine an individual that is 2 years from retirement, or let's make it more dire. An individual is retiring in calendar year 2022. They're going to retire in the next 3 months. I would hope that individual has, over the last 2 years, built up a nest egg inside of the TSP G Fund. Now, we'll talk about the G Fund for 30 seconds. The G Fund is this phenomenal tool. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the open market. It is exclusively available to federal employees, only in their TSP, and I commonly refer to it as bulletproof. There are federal government obligations specifically related to federal employees that are only accessible by federal employees, principal guaranteed, and a very decent yield. Liquid, daily liquid, guaranteed principal, certainly a higher yield historically than money market accounts. So if that federal employee who's approaching retirement in the next 3 months, if they have none of that, let's say if they have the TSP, the fixed income in the TSP, or they have the S fund or the C fund in the TSP, that person is going to, unfortunately regret certain decisions, i.e., as interest rates previously mentioned went from 0.4, I think it was 0.38 was the 5-year treasury, or I'm sorry, the 10-year treasury rather, mid-COVID, that 0.38% now above 4, highest 10-year treasury in quite some time. The analogy is a teeter-totter. Interest rates rise, principal value decline. So as interest rates have risen during that period of time, the principal value of those bonds has been hurt substantially. So normally the safe, big air quotes, the safe money, which is the money that you can rely on more readily, the money that you want to rely on in retirement, you want to have obviously, safe and secure instruments. Bonds are not always safe and secure. And if we get a rising interest rate market, which the Fed has very, very, very clearly stated they're going to aggressively attack inflation. That is literally the spotlight saying, we, the Fed, are going to raise rates. That's the only definition that statement is made. Rising rates will continue.
Yeah. Let me ask you another question. And again, to your point, you don't have to take you build up the nest egg, but you don't have to take all the money out at once. So I think that makes your point that because you're not taking all the money, you're doing systematic withdrawals of some type. That actually plays into your favor as well. Let me ask you about taxation, because that's an important component of anybody taking money out in retirement. How much you're going to be taxed, whether you're going to be taxed at the federal and state level. What are some things we need to be thinking about as it relates to taxation and getting that 1099, potentially getting that 1099 at the end of the year, maybe?
Jeff, again, it really kind of depends on how early into the process you've been planning. 100% of the distributions coming out of a federal employee's thrift savings plan is taxable. Social Security is taxable, the pension's taxable, any retirement income. So if an individual has not taken a percentage of those dollars and allocated them to, for instance, the Roth TSP, or they didn't move out of FEGLI years and years and years ago and allocate those funds into something like an IRS 7702 qualified insurance plan, individuals are able to borrow from that cash value in those plans in the future in a very, very tax-friendly manner. If the individuals didn't make those decisions many years ago, you can't make those decisions knocking on the door of retirement. It's baked in. So to the point of how do we get that? How do we control or manage the taxation? The hope, the smartest federal employees will have had that conversation with the financial planner that they are working with, the federal employee retirement expert that they're working with, hopefully 3, 5, 10 years ago. If you get in front of that train, you're going to be fine. If you're at the door trying to make that decision, the decision's been made for you. And so the IRS is going to get his, right? Uncle Sam's the taxes exist, death taxes, so they're coming. And so we just printed $5 trillion. Arguably, it's fair to assume that taxes might have to increase in the near term. Jeff, to button it up on that, the point being is this: people have, and I guess you could probably summarize all of what I've said so far, maybe in this sentence. The earlier you approach the problems that are going to exist, the more impactful the solutions you'll be able to deliver. So the earlier you get at it, the earlier you have these conversations. And Jeff, you've asked some very, very, very pointed questions. Volatility, the inability to see the future, and the volatility in the market, interest rates, whatever else. And then, of course, the obvious nature of taxes. Those are things that every federal employee and technically every retiree has to address. The best advice anybody can receive is approach it as early as humanly possible. Find a smart, talented, capable individual that can hopefully guide you through that process, that knows the questions to ask, and hopefully has a lot of the right answers. Find someone that has those answers that you can trust, and hopefully get in front of that as early as possible.
Yeah, I think and use the resources that are available to you to educate yourself, but also seek out the right person or persons to help you. Jeff, again, this is a big topic. I think we gave it some justice, but there's a lot to unpack there. Really appreciate you coming on the program. Thanks so much for sharing your perspective. We look forward to having you back on the program again very soon.
Jeff, thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Take care.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to? Drop us a line, and don't forget, for all the latest curated news in lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more in all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archive, check out our latest content, or visit our website, and of course, our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the first lifestyle and wellness network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.